Welcome everybody to the Economies and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel. You may be aware that we've joined slightly late. We had some technical issues, but the fantastic team have sorted that out as well. So thanks to our IT colleagues for that. So we'll start off with the membership of the committee. I will go around everybody, but I just wanted to make a couple of points initially. So we now have Councillor Iredale on the committee, so welcome Councillor Iredale, and he's replacing Richard Eastwood. And I want to thank Richard for all the work he did to support our committee over the years as well. And I just wanted to also mention that one of our co-optees, Ailey Ogden, has resigned from the panel. And again, I just want to thank her for all the diligent work she did to support the panel as well. We don't have a replacement at the moment, but I know there's some recruitment of co-optees ongoing as well from the council. So I'm just going to go around the scrutiny panel members just to get them to introduce themselves. So Councillor Iredale.
Good afternoon. I've rejoined the council and I'm pleased to be on this committee.
Welcome, thank you very much. Councillor Bolt.
Martin Bolt, Councillor for Murphy Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Yusra Hussain for Batley West Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
John Taylor, Councillor for Cathburton Ward.
Great stuff. Chris.
Chris Friend, co-optee.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Hi everybody, I'm Gwen, Councillor Lowe, Councillor for Batley West.
Thank you. And we should have Andrew. I don't know if anyone can see him at the moment. He was with us previously. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if he's on. Should be here. I'm just going to ask our governance officer, Helen, can you see Andrew? I'm sorry, I can't always see everybody.
Yes, I'm just looking on the participants list.
He is still in the meeting.
Yeah, he's still showing at the moment, but he may have lost connection if he's not speaking to us.
No problem. All right. Well, Andrew Bird is also one of our co-optees. He might be having a few technical issues at the moment, but hopefully he can join in on the discussions soon. So we have minutes of the previous meeting. This was back on the 4th of March 2021. Can we approve those minutes, or are there any matters arising? Councillor Taylor?
I was just going to move them.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
Chair, sorry.
Yes, Councillor Bolt.
May have been discussed before before book club, but it's my understanding that from the High Court judgment on remote meetings, it said that all meetings have to take place under the 1972 Act and must take place in person to make decisions. So we can't approve meetings. We can't approve anything on a remote meeting, according to High Court judgment, which was taking place earlier this year. The relaxation of legislation to allow remote meetings was not continued, and even then the LGA, Local Government Association, and the National Association of Local Councils went to the High Court. The High Court upheld the view that decision-making meetings have to take place in person.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bolt, for raising that matter. So this was discussed at Overview, Scrutiny and Management Committee, and we received advice from our governance officer, Samantha Lawton, and within that advice it was said that decision-making bodies like full council and planning do have to meet in person or in a hybrid form, but it's different for scrutiny because we're not decision-making in the same way. We give recommendations, of course. We scrutinise, but we're not decision-making in the way full council or planning are. So we can still meet virtually. It will be reviewed in September, perhaps earlier if anything changes, but all the scrutiny panels will be meeting virtually until it's reviewed again in September, or earlier if anything changes. So that's where we're at on that.
It would be useful, Chair, if all members could have had sight of that, because for the legislation has been interpreted and strengthened that even parish councils, some of them only have 5 members on the whole parish council, even parish councils have to meet in person. So if a parish council, which is not making anything like the decisions, because obviously things which we discussed today will be then reported to Cabinet as this committee having agreed, endorsed or whatever. and I'd like to see that legal view and see how it gets around their eminent judges saying that we have to meet in person.
Yeah, and I think at the meeting we did say to the governance officer that members had asked for that in writing, which we haven't received yet. So we'll follow that up for you, Councillor Bolt, and get that information to the whole panel, so they are aware that we've asked for that in writing. We got the update verbally from the governance officer, so we didn't receive anything in writing at the time, but we'll certainly ask for that to be provided.
I thank you, Chair. I strongly suggest that we should get a written legal statement, because where a council solicitor is countermanding High Court judges, you would imagine that such advice was not taken by a solicitor, but presumably on barrister's advice.
Like I say, what we'll do is we'll get that information, the information that we can in writing to you. As I say, the decisions being made here differently from other decision-making bodies such as full council and planning, but we'll get that information across to you. So is anyone, given that, are we okay to sort of move and second the minutes, given what Martin said, and we'll make sure that's we request that information? Yeah, okay, perfect. We'll move on from that then. Interest.
Sorry, could I, just for the record,
yes,
could you note that I'm not voting on that? I'm not going to abstain because that is a voting motion. I wish it to record that I didn't vote because I'm still unsure, with having not seen that legal advice. Yeah, I don't want to do anything, obviously, which could put myself or the council, so I'm not going to vote.
Okay, that's fine. Helen, if we can just make a note of that as well, that'd be great. Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to move on to interests. Are there any interests that councillors want to raise now in relation to our items? Councillor Taylor.
I'm not sure whether I do need to raise this or not, but as a result of the annual general meeting and the following that, the decisions on outside bodies, I'm now one of the appointees. I'm not actually sure what my title is. I should know really, shouldn't I? But I'll check after the meeting. But I'm one of the appointees on SUIS or CETA, and I don't know whether that has any bearing on the waste strategy discussion.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth noting actually. So I know
I'll look up what exactly my title is. Sure.
Exactly. That'd be great. I mean, I know there's an actual form that we get in the paper documents, but I don't know if you can fill that in electronically, and then we can just get that information over to. Should it come to you, Helen?
Yes, please.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. Any other interest that anyone wants to raise? No? Okay, well, if you think of it later, please just get in touch with Helen, and she can let you know if anything needs adding. Okay, admissions to the public. The meeting is held in public virtually. Hopefully that will be changing later on, but we're virtual at the moment, and it's available online on YouTube. Deputations and petitions, we haven't received any, and public question time, we haven't received any public questions. So we're going to swiftly move on to item 7, which is the Kirklees Resource and Waste Strategy. We've got Cabinet members Will Simpson and Naheed Mather here for this item, and we've also got Sue, Will and Natalie as officers. So I'm going to hand over, I think Sue might be introducing the item, and then Natalie is going to present the slides.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Paul. So yes, thank you very much for having this item on the agenda today, and good afternoon to everybody in the room. I do look forward to being able to be in the room, but we're around the table together here. So the development of the resource and waste strategy has been to Scrutiny. It's also been through a number of different elements of the authority at various times over the last 2 years as it's been developed. And we last came in December 2020 when we were in mid-engagement process at that point, and explained to the Scrutiny Committee on what that engagement was and how we were taking it forward. The planned engagement had been scheduled for summer 2020. in a face-to-face environment, and we actually got a couple of face-to-face events on Dewsbury Market before we entered lockdown in March. So at that point we paused the consultation and engagement with the public whilst we developed a different approach to that, and then we were able to convert that to a virtual online experience for residents and stakeholders, but also through webinars and YouTube videos we printed the document and the consultation material that we had. We also had hard copies available for residents and stakeholders if they requested, and we also provided this documentation to our residents in our homes and neighbourhoods properties, understanding that there may be, you know, connectivity issues or concerns in some of those properties. So we circulated that. So the consultation responses we received were from the whole of that, and we had a really good response to the engagement, and we had, I think, probably over 23,000 engagements online through the virtual experience that we had there, and we received over 7,000 responses to the consultation itself. So those consultations and the responses that we've been given, and the vast majority of which were hugely constructive and very aspirational for the authority. So it was really good to see that the residents of Kirklees are very keen to see us move forward in our waste and resource management moving forward. And we've used that to develop the resource and waste strategy that has been circulated to you now. I would emphasise that this is a strategy. It outlines our strategic ambitions and is the overarching framework which establishes the principles of how we'll move forward to manage our resources and waste in Kirklees. The resource and waste strategy is set against the backdrop of the current PFI contract reaching its expiry. We're now in year 23 of the 25-year contract. And it's also developed alongside the National Resource and Waste Strategy and the requirements that we're expecting that to bring forward. And I do just want to clarify that this strategy isn't a business case for how we deliver to these aspirations moving forward, and it's not a business case for the procurement of the next waste management contract. The work on developing these business cases is moving forward, but the resource and waste strategy is a fundamental pillar in driving what those business cases need to deliver for us. So the approval and moving forward on the resource and waste strategy is a prelude to that process of those business cases coming forward. I'd also like to highlight that there's a really strong focus in the strategy of this not just being about waste. The importance here is that we recognise the materials that we want to throw away as being resources, and that we want to work with our communities and our businesses and our individual residents to look at the waste they produce as a resource and find as many alternatives to moving that up the hierarchy as possible. So that's the reduce, reuse, recycle, Councillor Taylor. It's trying to move it up that hierarchy as much as possible so that we end up disposing of as little as possible. I said we're also set against the backdrop of the National Resource and Waste Strategy, and we're still awaiting the outcome of the government's Environment Bill coming forward. That itself has been affected by the pandemic, and we're waiting for this to receive its royal assent, at which point we will get the clarity as local authorities on what we will be required to deliver moving forward to achieve that consistency of service across the nation that is very important within that national strategy. The level of uncertainty on when the Act will get royal assent and how this will affect local authorities, both in the services we're required to provide and the timescales that we're required to provide them in, is something that is playing out in the environment of us adopting a strategy here in Kirklees. There's also a lack of clarity on what funding will be made available through the development of the National Resource and Waste Strategy in order to implement the Environment Act when it's passed. The government is very clear that its intention is that there'll be no net burden on local authorities, and that the principle for the new strategy will be that the producer pays, but how the producer pays and how this funding is then allocated to local authorities still lacks that clarity for us. However, in Kirklees, we need to move forward with the development and the adoption of an aspirational resource and waste strategy, and that's what we're here to discuss with you today. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Natalie, if Natalie's okay to take us forward in the presentation. Hopefully Natalie's able to share her screen.
Thank you, Sue. I'll just share my screen and get the presentation. Hopefully that's loaded in for everybody now. So yeah, thanks again, Sue, for that. And I'll just talk you through. I've just got a few slides to go through today, just to give you an overview of our resources and waste strategy and the types of things that this contains. So I'll just start off with talking a little bit about the development of the strategy and how we've got to this point where we are today. So as Sue touched on, the National Waste Strategy, that has, within that there was a collection consistency framework, and this was a proposal from government to ensure that all local authorities collect the same types of materials from curbside. And from this, we took part in a collection consistency trial, which we received grant funding for, which took that collection consistency framework and tested it within Kirklees. So we tested out the different options that were going to be available to deliver that framework and how that would impact us. So that went through a robust sort of options appraisal process that took place between 2018 and 2020. And what that meant we came out with was a sort of top 10 of options which could be implemented within Kirklees, which were all scored against that options appraisal. So what we did from that then, with the top options that we had, we went out to public engagement. So that was a part of the public engagement, which I'll touch on shortly. It sort of tested out those options that we came out with, again, to put those to residents and get that feedback from them. And then that was kicked off in October last year. And just as Sue mentioned, we had to sort of slightly change our plans for that due to the COVID pandemic, which we managed to get some physical meetings in, but then had to move to sort of a virtual online engagement. That concluded at the beginning of this year in January. And throughout that time, we also attended party briefings and scrutiny in December. We have feedback on the engagement process. So I'll just talk you through what our public engagement consisted of. So just as Sue mentioned, it was one of the most successful public engagements we've had. And we had, I think it was over around 7,500 responses that came back. This public engagement was to share our vision of a zero waste Kirklees. So trying to move to a point where we send zero unavoidable waste to landfill. As part of that, the image on the bottom left corner there is one of the options that came out as part of that collections consistency trial, but was one of the top scoring for Kirklees. And this sets out sort of what our standard collection could potentially be. I'll just talk you through that. So as you can see, we'd still have the green and grey bins, which we do have in Kirklees currently. However, the green bin would involve introducing more plastics to be collected at the curbside, as well as cartons too. And then this also looks at introducing a new glass collection, which in the standard image there has a 140 litre slimline bin to collect for glass. And then also a food waste collection, which is a brown caddy that you can see on the left there. So that would be the sort of standard collection that we looked at and to get feedback from residents as part of that engagement. However, we did want to take a real place-based approach to this. And so although that's the standard collection, we did also have other options which we put out for feedback, which included other measures such as having an inner caddy, which sits inside the green bin, and that would be to collect the glass in. And this would avoid the need to have an additional bin on the streets, bearing in mind that some properties may not have the room to host an additional bin. There were other options in there as well, again, which we put out for get the residents' feedback. However, as part of this public engagement, we did want to recognise that when we look at the waste hierarchy, that recycling is actually 3 steps down on that waste hierarchy, and that actually we should be looking to reduce and reuse waste before it comes to be recycled. And so the 2 images that you can see on the left and the right there, were the journey of a yoghurt pot and the food waste story. And what these were part of was us just trying to start that conversation about the reduce and reuse of waste. And we picked these 2 items as yoghurt pots tend to be a known item that are quite difficult to recycle. And food waste currently makes up around 36% of the waste in our grey bin. So we took these 2 items and just made these handy little booklets. And what they do is they talk through these materials from how they're made in the first place and the steps that can be taken to reduce and reuse them before they come to be recycling. And those are still available on our website as little booklets for people to read and view. So once we finished that public engagement, and that ended around the beginning of this year, we took the feedback that we received from residents and collated that again with that consistency trial and our plans in-house, which has then come together to formulate the strategy, which is where we're at today. So I'll just talk you through what that strategy looks like. So there's 3 thematic sections within the strategy, which are broken up into delivering modern and sustainable services, leading by example, and supporting Kirklees families and ensuring inclusion. And I'll just go through in more detail as to what those sections contain. So our first one is delivering modern and sustainable services. And then here is a list of all the services that are included within this section. And I'll just touch base on each and just give an overview and an idea of the sorts of things that are contained within there. So first of all, we've got engagement and communication. And rightly so, this is the sort of largest section that we've got in there. You know, bearing in mind that we want to, again, encourage, engage and communicate with residents in a way that's going to encourage, you know, more about behaviour change in terms of reduce and reuse. So this is our largest section in there. And within that section, we've got ideas on how we'll do more work with schools, so continue our work with going to school, delivering assemblies and talks on recycling. That sort of stuff. We've also got our workshops. So again, how we plan to hold more reuse workshops. So at the moment, we've got food waste ones. And this section also sets out how we look to expand those and include more, such as repair cafes and workshops and things like that, as well as lots of other ideas. Next, we've got our recycling and waste collections. So this is a bit where we talk about those expanded curbside collections. And our aspiration in there is to have an aim to double our recycling rate from what it is currently, to recycle at least 55% of our waste by 2025. And this section just sets out the ways we're going to do that. So as I mentioned before, increasing the materials that are accepted into the green bin to include more plastics, and as well as a separate glass and food waste collection. And when we did our public engagement, we did ask residents what they would most like to see collected at curbside, and glass, plastics and food waste were the top 3 that were identified, and all of those are included within the proposed new collection system. Next, we've got waste disposal. This touches on our waste disposal contract, and just a little bit of detail in here about the assets that are currently included within there. And then this sets out how we would look to re-procure a contract which delivers all the aspirations that within our strategy. We've also got our household waste and recycling centres. So within here, we have an aim to reach a recycling rate of 70% on our sites. And this section sets out the ways in which we do that. So expanding the types of materials that can be recycled on site, as well as introducing other measures such as ANPR technology, registering number plates so it's easier for residents to access sites once they get there. Our bulky waste collections. So this is where we're going to look to improve the way that bulky waste collections are booked. So we look to aim to residents to be able to book a slot for this. So instead of having to book a collection and then wait a couple of weeks for that to be picked up, they'll actually be able to book a slot, so they'll know where and when they can actually put out their items for collection. And that's the phase 1 of that service, where and then phase 2 would look to how we can partner it with charities as well. So again, encouraging more about reduce and reuse side of waste, and partnering with charities to ensure we can reuse all the items that we can come through that stream. Next, we've got bring sites. So at the moment, we have around 150 bring sites across the district, which you can currently take glass to, and some have textile banks on. Obviously, as we roll out the new collection system, the need and function of those may potentially change. So we will, as the strategy progresses, look to have a look at the function of those sites and make sure that they're best placed, and they have the most appropriate materials on there to be sort of collected. Landfill sites, that's one that we included in a strategy for us to review. So it's just to make sure that we're getting the most out of our sites, and if there's any other ways, obviously these are closed landfills, if there's any other measures we can be using on those. So for example, can they be harnessed for solar energy, or used to collect the heat and gas, things like that from there. So we'll have a review of those just to make sure that we're getting the most use out of those sites that we can. Next, we've got our cleaner environment. So this, again, push forward our cleaner and greener agenda, and just includes measures as how we'll encourage that. So things like our street sweeping function, and also our litter bins. So ensuring that there's more recycling facilities available in high footfall areas such as town centres, to be able to recycle litter. And then finally is our commercial waste service. So we currently offer mostly general waste on our commercial waste service. We're very limited recycling offering. However, we're going to be launching later this year a new recycling collection on that service. So again, this stretches out that it's not just for residents, our strategy, but also for businesses too. And we will be offering that recycling service to businesses as of this year. So that's the delivering on the services. The next strategy section is leading by example. So this is how us as Kirklees would like to lead by example within our strategy, and it's that whole ethos of doing with or not to, and practice what you preach, and how we want to set a precedent of good practice. So these are some of the sections that are included within there. So first of all, we've got council facilities. So this is looking at our council assets, and ensuring we have things like consistent recycling collections throughout, as well as promoting the use of green energy, things like that in our buildings. Next, we've got catering. So this is obviously, we have a lot amount of packaging stuff coming through our catering service, as well as food. So it's making sure we source suppliers that are sustainable and using sustainable packaging, as well as eventually looking for outlets as to how we can reduce food miles and things like that. Our venues and events. So this is looking at things such as reducing single-use plastics at all our venues and events that we host, so eventually phasing those out and offering sustainable materials. Next, we've got Kirklees homes and neighbourhoods. So again, like leading by example. This is looking at our own housing stock, and ensuring that we have effective recycling facilities that are available. And this is follows on from successful projects in other local authorities, where we would look to sort of look at these spaces and have them more as sort of open and inviting spaces, rather than just some bin stores that are in shared facilities. So looking at improving those open spaces there. And then we've got national initiatives. So these are things that are going on nationally that we would look to get involved with and promote where we can. So there's lots of national schemes that are ongoing, such as like schemes where you can recycle little items such as crisp packets and things like that. So we look to get involved in those where possible, as well as providing more stations such as water refill stations and things like that. And then finally, we've got our people in this section. So this is just recognising that in order to deliver all the aims and initiatives within the strategy, there's going to be a large amount of change required by our workforce, and it's just supporting our workforce in order to make that transformational change, and I will support our people through that. So finally, within the strategy, we've got supporting Kirklees families and ensuring inclusion. So this links quite heavily to our engagement communication section and all the things that we're delivering, how we're working with residents. But it just goes that little step further and just touches base more on the families that potentially require a little bit more support. So things such as our assisted collections and how we'll continue to offer those, and improvements that we'll make within there. We've also got Insurer Inequality. So we state here that anything we'll do will have an integrated impact assessment to ensure that we are promoting that equality. But also it touches here about equity too, and that potentially ensuring equality isn't always the best outcome for families. And so we'll also, where appropriate, take an equitable view, and that some people and some communities may require a little bit of actually additional support in order to reach the same goals and outcomes. We've got our environmental impact here. So this all states how, throughout measures in the strategy, we'll ensure that we're doing initiatives that are most environmentally friendly and have the most positive environmental impact. So this includes things like our vehicle replacement programme, how we'll look to source more of a green fleet and electric vehicles where we can, and continue to monitor our carbon emissions throughout the strategy. Then we've got our ongoing monitoring. So this just touches base on how we'll monitor progress of this strategy. So we've got ongoing monitoring that will be taking place in terms of our recycling rates and carbon emissions. And then we'll also conduct and publish a public 5-year review. So around 2026, which will just set out the progress that we're making against our milestones and the action plan that's within there, and publish our progress. So this is just a model here of what our future waste treatment model could look like. And it's just a visual representation of the waste streams in future. So it just gives that transparency of where things go from a household and to how those are collected and where they're sent, and just shows, you know, the whole process of how we will reduce, reuse and recycle as much as we can, and how that process looks like from start to finish. And then right at the bottom, we've got the disposal of unavoidable waste. So, you know, it's only once everything's been through this process, things that we cannot recycle, that will be the very last resort of sending things to landfill. So within our strategy as well, we've got a 12-month and 5-year pledge. So this is just some of the initiatives that we will be delivering over the next 12 months and also the next 5 years. So within here, we've got our food waste workshops. So those are already ongoing and will continue throughout this year. We've got a new recycling champion scheme, which we'll be launching around September this year. And that's just having recognised individuals in communities who can provide that advice and support on recycling alongside our existing recycling and waste advisors. We've also got the new collection to the commercial waste service or recycling collection, which I mentioned earlier. That's going to be launching in September. And initially that will launch to schools and then be opened up wider to local businesses too. We're going to be trialling a reuse shop in Huddersfield, and that's due to launch in November 2021. So that's feeding in items that are taken to household waste sites, those that can be reused and then fed in rather than being disposed of or recycled. And again, pushing things that reduce and reuse waste hierarchy. And next, we've got a composting scheme. So we're hoping to release a scheme on that in February next year. So throughout last year, we conducted a composting trial on some different types of composters, just to gain some better understanding of how effective they are and for use in Kirklees. So we're just finishing off the analysis of that trial, and we should hope to launch a scheme next year. Within the next 12 months, we'll also produce and improve litter facilities. So this is what I mentioned earlier about providing more recycling on foot and litter. And we'll also introduce the new bulky waste system early next year. So we're looking to move to that bookable slot for residents. We're going to also create an improved fly tipping response model, so improving the way in which we respond to and clear a fly tipping, as well as commencing a trial on glass collections at the curbside. So as I mentioned in our public engagement, we put out the ideas for the different types of containers that we could use for a new collection system. And we had very strong support for the collection of glass. There wasn't sort of any one was a clear winner, and so we would like to just do some more trials on that, just to get some more evidence base as to what actually works in Kirklees and test out those containers actually physically, as well as the types of vehicles that could be used. So we'll be commencing that trial at the end of next year. And then over the next 5 years, we'd like to achieve a 90% diversion from landfill rate, as well as offering more reuse shops. So we've got the food waste ones that are happening this year. We'd like to extend those and offer more within the next 5 years, so the repair shops and things like that. We also want to include a community reward scheme. So this is about giving back to those communities who either have sort of the highest recycling rates or the most improvement in recycling rates, and giving back to those communities with some form of reward scheme. And we've also got more plastics collected at the curbside. So this is within the green bin, allowing more materials to be placed in there for collection. We've got the re-procurement of our waste disposal contract, which I touched on earlier, and then as well as the separate collection of glass and food. And we'll also create Huddersfield Town Centre heat network. So that's harnessing energy from our energy from waste facility in order to power local businesses, and that's due to be created within the next 5 years too. So finally, this is just a flight path for this strategy and just to visualise where it's been thus far and the journey that it's on currently. So at the moment, we've had quite a few rounds of internal stakeholders that have fed into the strategy, including all the strategic leadership teams across the council, who've all had sight and had input into this. And we've also, so today, as you can see, we're 13th, we're at Scrutiny panel today, and this is due to go to Cabinet on the 27th of July, and then full council on the 8th of September. So that's the end of my presentation, so I'll just stop presenting there. And then I'll just hand back to Councillor Uppall to open up to questions. Be back.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate that. So members, if you just raise your hands on the function, and then I'll try and pick everybody up on that. So Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Harpreet. Thank you, Natalie, for that whistle-stop tour on this. That was really, really interesting. I actually took part myself on the public online engagement, and I encouraged a lot of other people to do so. So that's good to hear that we got about 7,000 people taking part in that. I think the consultation online was really good. I think it was a very, very easy process to go through. Other people have said the same. They said it was actually quite enjoyable as well, and the graphics were really, really good. And people wanted to take part because it really meant something to them. They could really, really connect with what this consultation was about. So like, just bear with me, I've just scribbled some notes down. I like the idea of going into schools and talking to school children. When I first became a councillor, that is one of the services that the council actually did. They went in to talk to children about waste, about dropping litter, about recycling, and they even talked about, you know, the life of a quaver packet, about a rat could actually live on the inside of a quaver packet for about a month, just licking the fat and the oils from inside the quaver packet, which was really good. And this officer that I went into schools with, they also had a bit of a competition. You would give kids certain items, and you'd have a grey bin and a green bin, and you would ask them which bin do you think they should go in to encourage them to recycle. And I actually used to do that with my children as well. I'd give them something to go outside. Which bin do you think that should go in? So it's about educating people, young people, so they then can educate their parents as well. I like the idea of booking a bulky waste collection service because when you ring up to have an item or several items removed, it's all, is it outside now? It has to be outside now. And sadly, a couple of months ago, we had a family bereavement, and because it was rented property, we had to book for some of the items to be collected. And it was a matter of putting them outside immediately and paying for the collection, which we weren't bothered about, but the fact was a couple of days later, these things were actually taken. So they never got collected by the council, they actually got taken. I've got a bit of a sad confession. I like going to bottle banks. I don't say I've got a drink problem, but I actually like going to bottle banks. I find it very therapeutic, just shoving them through as hard as I can to hear them smash. I know I must get out more. I'm very, very sad, aren't I?
You're supposed to deposit, not withdraw, though, Gwen.
National initiatives about crisp packets. I do know that the RSPCA actually do collect like crisp packets and dog treat packets as well, because they get money for recycling those. I don't know what the companies where they go, but the RSPCA actually already do that. And just one question. I'm always getting asked about dog poo bins. I know we don't have dog poo bins, but I'm always been told that if you put your dog poo bag in a bin, it contaminates that bin. Are we doing anything to tackle that? Thank you. Thanks, Harpreet.
Thanks, Gwen. I don't know who wants to respond to those points.
I can respond. I think they're all very useful. I know education's at the heart of the resource strategy, and we did want to launch some of the education early, as Councillor Taylor knows. With some of the conversations we had, we did have a full schools programme developed to launch last year. Unfortunately, because of what everyone knows happened, we couldn't, but that's all waiting. We have increased our waste advisor resources again to get back into schools and get the, the materials recycling facility that you turn the wheel and you can sort the different things. So making it real again for school children. And I think that's why we wanted to target the new recycling service into schools first, because that sort of carries that ethos through. I think the other points are really, really valid ones. You can tell that we got a lot of similar feedback through the consultation and through speaking with other councillors. So I think they're very valid, and it always ends up with dog poo, doesn't it? At the end of the day, which is another issue that we have dealt with before. You can place dog poo within normal litter bins. Some of the issues we've seen is when it's really high concentration. So some litter bins have been pure dog poo, and that's caused obviously some offensive issues and some issues in emptying them. So we are looking at how we reshape some of the wider services, such as in grounds maintenance and within street cleansing, and including a presence in our parks over weekends. So we're introducing additional resources this summer that are going to go around the parks when people are actually in them over the weekend. So we keep on top of this issue rather than it sort of building up into a bigger issue come Monday morning.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting discussions on rats and dog poos, but you've both put me off, so thanks. Thanks, particularly the rat one. I think that's a good one for education, isn't it, really? Next up is Councillor Idale.
Thank you. Whilst the report, as I said earlier, it looks good. The devil is in the detail, of course, and we don't have a lot of the nitty-gritty detail here as yet. Education, I must confess that I have difficulty in certain paper and cardboard user containers. Is it a grey? Is it a green? How much education are we doing to the public other than in schools? Except we've got schools covered fairly well, but what about the vast majority of people who actually put stuff in the bins? And how are we going to engage the quite a large percentage of people who will not do the surveys? They will not. They will just not engage with the collection service, resulting in the contaminated bins. And how do we compare with other like authorities? Not just everybody, but like authorities. We usually have comparisons with other authorities. All right, I'll look for now. For me, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Idale. Not sure who wants to respond to that.
I think if I can start on the engagement side of it, and the engagement, the sort of education and engagement with the wider community rather than through schools. That's why one of the largest sections of the strategy is about that engagement process, and not just basing on the council to do that engagement, but also looking at the community engaging within itself as well. So the community champions programme, which is to encourage people within communities, because something that we saw through the engagement process was passion, and the amount of passion that there is within communities, not throughout communities, but within communities. So it's actually using that local knowledge and that local experience, those local contacts, to actually have those conversations locally, as well as the conversations that we'll be having as the council. But also some of the feedback that we got was that there was some misunderstanding about what could go in which container, and that there is a need for some clarity on that. So yes, we will be building up that sort of information on what we're meaning by the materials that can go in each of the bins as we develop that strategy moving forward. But listening to what people have, where the confusion is, and addressing that. But also, as Will says, we have an enhanced team of the waste advisors, and that's part of their role as well. So as we look at bins and see contamination issues within bins, we have those conversations with residents to enable them to understand what it is that we're looking for in each of those collection containers. And obviously last year we did have some issues with, you know, not being able to go and do the door knocking as we would normally have done. So looking at sticker in bins, but that's not as effective as having those conversations with people face to face to understand where they're coming from, to understand what their questions are as well. So those are all things that are part of this moving forward, is that engagement. But you're absolutely right in that there will always be people who are more difficult to encourage to take part in this process. And we do need everybody to be on board with this, but we've also got a huge amount of people who are passionate, who really want to engage with this, and so we'll build on that good practice and bring the poorer practice along with it. On the issues on how we compare with other authorities, looking at our recycling and recovery, our recycling rate, it is relatively poor compared to the national picture and to other authorities, and that's very much to the development of our PFI contract, which, as we appreciate, was one of the earliest, well, if not the earliest within the UK of a waste PFI contract. And at that point, it was very much focused on landfill diversion. So it was to conform with the landfill directive, which was very much about not landfilling, and that led to the investment in the energy from waste facility and a contract that was focused on landfill diversion. We have built up that contract with Suez to actually recover more through recycling, but actually that's one of the reasons why we're not as high performing as we would want to be now, as the national sort of move has been towards more recycling and recovery above energy from waste. In the hierarchy, we need to move forward in that, and that's why this strategy is written with that driver in mind, that driving up of our recycling rates to that 55% figure.
Okay, I'm sorry, was there anything else, Sue? I
think those were the main issues that were raised there, or main questions. Yeah, sorry.
If I just pick up on the detail, Sue. Yep. I think that sort of Sue set out a little bit of context at the beginning, that this is meant to be the vision, the strategy, the framework that drives the outcomes. What we've got in parallel development is a number of business cases that has much more detail. So, for example, at the moment, we're working with our consultants, Woods, and our legal consultants, Bevan Britton, on what the new procurement would look like. But we need the waste strategy to dictate in what any procurement, what those outcomes would be, what frameworks we might need, what material streams we have to deal with. So we're detailing up a business case that has all that nitty-gritty and specific modelling and detailing and waste flows in parallel, but this needs to land first. Then what will follow on is much more detail, and we're obviously willing to scrutiny along that process as well. This is just procurement is. Or what the initiative is on our waste, changing our waste collection services, or what disposal outlets we may or may not want.
Okay, great stuff, thank you. Councillor Mather, so you've got your hand up as well, and then I'll bring in the other panel members.
Okay, I just wanted to say, to give more detail, this is, as Will says, a strategy document. Sue has gone through the answering of the questions, but I just wanted to say that last week we did an estate walkabout with all our officers, where we walk and talk to our residents and tell them what goes in what bin. I was actually lifting the lids, showing them. So, for example, a simple mistake, pizza cardboard is in the green bin. Sorry, it can't go because it's got oil on, so it goes out. All the yogurt pots and whatnot is in the green bin. Sorry, it can't go out, it goes the other way. Then you talk contamination, and our successful trial in South Kirklees was very, very good in actually getting people to understand what goes into the bins. And if we hadn't had the pandemic, we would have accelerated some of these educative campaigns where we talk to our residents, we take them through not only by putting on contamination and not taking it, but actually explaining why you're not taking it and how they can increase their recycling rates and what constitutes contamination. It's just that one person who contaminates the wagon, you know, and those kinds of conversations are ongoing, Councillor Idale, and I hope that we are hoping to increase as we continue to top and tail strategy and the work plans and business cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson, do you want to come in now, or can I bust it up?
Yeah, I just want to add, sorry to jump in for Martin and John, I want to add something very briefly onto what Naheed said, just to, I mean, the waste advisors are having a real impact that we can see and measure, particularly where we know we've had issues with contaminated waste, meaning that the entirety of the load is being rejected. That we can see a measurable impact over the weeks since we've introduced those additional resources, and they've been able to get out that those figures have improved literally week on week, and it's continuing to get better. So I just wanted to reflect back that we are, it's not just that the investment is happening and we hope that it's working. We are seeing a considerable improvement in terms of compliance and understanding about what can go in what bin.
Yeah, thank you for that. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Although I've been advised in the pre-meeting that there are many mentions of circularity in the report, I think it could be reinforced so that people are aware how stuff's going to get back and how stuff is recycled and reused, particularly if it can be done locally. The local MP had a slogan many years ago. He had a business he called Urban Mines. He was trying to use all these resources as a source of raw materials, which is the point you made in your presentation. I think trying to re-emphasise that point and the circularity of the economy would be really quite helpful. I think it would be good also to mention the ethical nature of downstream processing. There's too many stories of these recyclate streams ending up in some third country being picked over by underage children or something. So I think you just need to be, I know it's a strategy document, I think it's worthwhile having some objectives about how the material is processed downstream in terms of the ethical standards you'd expect there. I really reinforce the education job. I mean, it's already been mentioned several times, but getting people aligned with the standards you want in the bins, especially as you change the recycling of plastics, is a really big task. I think people are really confused now, and actually the messages you'll get if you visit the energy from waste facility is different from the one you get from Kirklees. If you visit your contractor, they'll encourage people to put more plastic in the green bins than your current criteria allow. Their argument is that that raises the energy value of the discard from the green bin, which has got a higher value. That may not benefit Kirklees, but it certainly seems to benefit your contractor. So your contractor isn't currently aligned with your messages at the door, if you like, in terms of what you can put in your green bins. It's very important. There's very clear alignment on that. And I suppose, without wanting to be a sort of a party pooper, you've used the word aspirational a number of times here. A lot of these processes are in place many other places already. I mean, curbside food collection is at least 15 years old in some places. And you're getting to it in 2025. We are in 2025. It's not that ambitious. It's just catching up with what is good practice. It's still going to be really tough to manage it, but I think it's more realistic to talk in those terms than really thinking it's aspirational, because we're not setting standards here which are different from those achieved elsewhere in the UK already.
Thank you, Andrew. Who wants to respond?
I can come in on that one. I fully agree with the moral aspects of things, and I think it's been one of the reasons why we've been very nervous about what we add into our green bin. We want to be very transparent of what it is, because a number of councils have jumped straight into, well, it'd be really good to get pots, tubs, trays, Tetra Paks and everything thrown in the green bins, and then they find there's no market for it, or the market is very questionable, and it ends up being, I've said this many times, burnt on the roadside in Turkey or within the Malaysian jungle, just some recent examples. So we're very, very conscious that, yes, we do have limited facilities, but we don't want to expand for the sake of the morality, because it loses the entire climate change ambitions that we have. It loses what we're trying to achieve with this, which is ultimately not to have to recycle anything because no one produces any waste. You know, it's minimisation and reuse are the key things and key messages we want to get through. I think there's a mix that I do agree with. Some of the things are perhaps not ambitious. It's about catching up, but I think other elements and other nuances of our approach are ambitious. So it's not about us perhaps facilitating everything for the community. It's how we connect the community with themselves within scrap stores, which may be reusing some waste furniture from a business to go into a school, how the community can connect themselves. You know, we're talking about toy warehouses, you know, sling warehouses, things like that are trying to focus actually how can the community and businesses come together to deliver the outcome, not just how can we just do the technical elements of what we collect on the curbside each week, because that's just the nuts and bolts, isn't it? You know, we know people have done that, we know it's tried and tested, but it's the wraparound and the wider aspirations within the strategy that I think are the really exciting bits. But what the technical element does is it makes it easy and simple for people to make a sustainable choice. And I think that's perhaps what we'll be missing and we want to catch up on. So yes, we do see people putting things in the wrong bins, but that's because we don't accept things in the wrong bins. So how do we get to make it easy and simple for them to make those choices? One of the other elements is, you know, our household waste sites got limitations on some of the materials. Well, let's expand those materials. Let's look at expanding the working times of those as well, so that people can use them more. Perhaps explore the mobile household waste sites as well. So some communities that might struggle with transport, we actually bring it to them, as opposed to taking away that temptation that it just goes over the garden fence. You know, so I think it is a real holistic approach that we're trying to take with all this.
Okay, thank you, Will. Naheed?
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to follow that one up by, the opportunities are there, and it is about being very inclusive, innovative, and making the investment to ensure that we meet the needs and aspirations of our communities. But as Will says, it is going to be something that you work in partnership. You don't do, you work with our communities to ensure that the future service delivers their aspirations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to, Andrew, did you want to come back?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. First, could I make an appeal for future meetings and that the cover sheet for the report is one for this scrutiny committee. As has been said, it's something where we are playing catch up. A lot of things that we are seeing as potential schemes, like the reuse shop, and I would say, why is it going to be in Huddersfield? Years ago, I saw reuse shops at household waste sites around elsewhere when I was on holiday, and it was like something from Westminster. I came back and asked our team, you know, why don't we do that here at our bring sites? You know, things like doors and stuff like that. You know, obviously not electrical items and things, but there are a lot of things that you could use, put on one site and resell. And it said the yes minister was, well, you don't understand, councillor. There's all sorts of health and safety. It wouldn't work around here. It might work down in Devon or whatever, but not around here. But obviously, there is scope for a reuse site. It's been proven many times. So I'm glad to say that probably 15 years after it was suggested, we're getting around to that. And I hope that we can also get around to things like there is a paucity of on-street litter bins in many places, which either leads to people dropping litter, which I know they shouldn't do, but human nature, or they find all sorts of innovative ways, like shoving it into the grip bins. Yeah, oh, it's a council thing, I'll shove it in there. So on-street bins could be positioned, and they could also be recycling centres. So people, as we see, if you can do it in a town centre, you know, there's lovely village of Hartshead in the Liversidge and Gummersall ward. You know, you walk from Hollybank School all through the village of Hartshead, past public rights of way, past intersections, past bus stops, and you do nearly a 2-mile loop before you come back to Robertstown, before you see a bin. Now, again, you know, people may be expected to take things home, but let's try and help them along the way. It's interesting that we talk about a glass trial when we've had glass collection. Now, I know there's been reference in the meeting today about trialling different types of lorry and trialling different types of receptacle from the home. But we could do that as a dynamic trial. We could say to the people, I mean, the residents of Kirklees, I mean, strangely enough, it was 19th of March when a press release went out and told the public that you're getting your glass collection back. Now, whether, as it was cynically said, that was just before the elections, but 4 months later, you know, it didn't say that it's going to be coming back so far down. And you know, we could put it back. We know how to operate glass collection. And if there are different types of home collector, you could put those in different areas and test against each other with a benchmark, etc. You know, you could have one area where you retain your bring sites. I fully support the idea of community rewards because I know certainly Murfield Ward was one of the top users of the bring sites and recycling. So I'd certainly like to see Kirklees giving money back to our hard-working community, the people who have been working with the Murfield in Bloom campaign and things and really sprucing up. So getting things back through community rewards is to be encouraged. The process as well, Sue had said that we are, I think she said we're poor in comparison to other authorities. And it'd be useful to see some data, you know, going back a few years. Where did this drop in standard come in? Because, you know, Kirklees used to be lauded. I mean, when we got the incinerator, which was supposed to waste to energy in 1999, we were said to be transformationally innovative. So at what point did we start dipping off that and become lackadaisical and trying to catch people up? In terms of what we're doing for the future, I think, again, it refers to what I've just said. We need to see some baseline info. What's the statistics that we're working on now in terms of either bring sites, household reuse, contamination, etc. And then in both numbers and percentage, because percentages without numbers is not as useful. Let's look at what we're aiming for going forward and what are the key performance indicators that we as Scrutiny can look at every 6 months or whatever and hold people to account and saying, right, you said you were going to be transforming our waste collection. Let's see how you are to achieve that. Reducing food miles and waste has been touched on. And one of the things I know that there's been raised a few times is bottled water. Whether venues, particularly council venues, still give bottled water. Because I think on a number of occasions when I've been to functions, there has been bottled water and it's almost sacrilegious. It's been Harrogate bottled water. You know, we have our own businesses in Kirklees, in the Kirkburton ward, that provide.
It's an outrage, Martin.
It's an outrage,
foreign
John.
Imports.
Yeah, then exactly. But I mean, the actual thing is, yeah, it's all economically and environmentally. You know, to be driving water from Harrogate down to Huddersfield when it could come from Kirkburton. Yeah, I'm sure John would bring it in on his push bike when he came. But yeah, we should be getting away from bottled water. But yes, the food miles and support for local businesses is key. So let's see some things that are really going to be transformational and not just tickling along. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mather?
Before the officers come in with some detailed responses to Martin's questions, I just wanted to say, Martin, thank you for your support for all of the initiatives that are being outlined in the strategy. I think sometimes we tend to forget where we've been. We've had austerity, where the services have been cut down to the bare bones. We started, the introduction did say we're beginning to invest, and investment into working up business cases and making sure that our new contract, which was the first, our aging contract will actually make up some of the ground that you seem to think we have failed on. And yes, we have, not because of want of trying, but of resources. And we hope to make sure that we will become one of the exemplars once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the officer want to add
Yeah, I can pick up some of those points. Reuse shop, completely agree. We've picked Huddersfield as the footprint is the easiest for the trial at this point. So some of our sites we anticipate will probably need some redevelopment. I've got an eye on Nab Lane, places like that we can't just put facilities on. And we wanted to get it in as quick as possible. So we've worked with Revive, who are our partners in this, so we're third sector. They're quite established in Leeds. They've got a lot of learning. But one of the first things is we want to understand what materials out there, what potential value is it, and then take that data to build the wider business case into any further redevelopment, house or waste sites or town centre shop development as well. But you're right, there is some tried and tested models for that, and I think it's really good. And the vision is that once we get it established, we can then move on to linking to our homes and neighbourhoods teams. You know, how we might look at people who are moving into houses for the first time, and we can create some, you know, some house packs I've seen done before in other councils. So people aren't moving in with nothing. We've got a set of something, and then when they're done with it, they've bought some new things. We can take it back and it's reused again. So that's the establishment. And once we get the bulky waste booking established, there's no reason we can't then look at the third sector provision in that as well, as to how we may further reuse things and sort of upcycle things as well. So I think that's a really exciting branch, but we have to start somewhere and understand what it is we're dealing with at the moment. We did want to look at perhaps one in the north as well. So you know there's one in Huddersfield and one in Dewsbury that's proposed, but the Huddersfield one's the closest to delivery in November. But it's not something.
Is that Huddersfield Town Centre, Will?
No, we'll be collecting. The Revive are going to establish a shop in Huddersfield.
Well, that's right. Well, so we're a reuse shop, and as I say, using the example of old doors and things like that. If that's in Huddersfield Town Centre, we already know that there's problems for people getting in with cars. It's got to be accessible for people to get in and out. You can't take a kitchen door home on a bus, can you?
That's true. But like I said, we're starting somewhere with it. We're collecting material from Emerald Street, and then we're seeing what is produced there, and obviously logging it, and then seeing what Revive can and can't do. They're experts in this, so we're working very led by them. You know, they've established themselves in Leeds. They've been very successful in Leeds and are expanding. So we want to take that learning and have the evidence-based decision making as we move it and roll it out. Litter bins, agree. You know, we've got close to 8,000 litter bins across the district. We do need to rationalise them. We do need to look at the condition of them. We do need to look at what the priority of them are. We have had a history of just giving them out a bit like sweets, I think, and we just need to review that, and that's why it's in there as one of the first priorities we want to look at, because it is what people do, and even more so than ever, post-pandemic, you know, as people got out walking more, we've seen a lot more people out on the streets. The glass trial, I think we all want to push the button, and we all want to get it back because it is a really good news story. I think the caution has come from our feedback from the consultation, and some significant concerns that came back from our communities over where they're going to store this and how they're going to collect it and how it's going to work. So we didn't think that just pushing ahead without listening to that would be the right approach to this, that we do want to take some learning. You know, we did have an overall majority for people wanting a wheeled bin, but we know that within some of our urban areas, high terraced areas, that people are saying, well, I can't store that, and they had a bit more of a preference for a caddy. So we do need to understand in real life what that means for people, and the only way to do that is to give them out and understand and get that feedback, similar to we've done with the composting trial. One of the other overriding factors in that is the material stream is uncertain at the moment. So the Environment Bill will bring in a deposit return scheme, which could potentially see that glass stream significantly reduce. And what we wouldn't want to do is push ahead with significant infrastructure investment that then's carrying air, because that's not good for anybody, is it? It's not good for people or the budgets. So we do want to see the trial, understand what is being produced, see the impact of what the Environment Bill brings, and then bring those two things together, and then make, like I said, an evidence-based decision making. And it may be that we take a different approach for different areas. You know, that would be innovative. That's not the normal approach. It's normally one size fits all. So we wanted to give ourselves the opportunity for that as well. And like I said, as we comparison to other councils, I've always said that our contract when it was signed back in 1998 was visionary. You know, it was really good at diverting from landfill. It was investing. We had a really good recycling plan. We topped out at about 34% in 2010, I think it was. And since then, that coincided with austerity, you know, with some of the budget constraints we've seen. But it also saw other people leapfrog us with their PFIs when their waste PFIs came on, with more modern MRFs, more modern facilities, you know, recovering food waste, having that infrastructure in place. So we, you know, even 34% these days would be considered low. You know, the average is about 45% now nationally. So we do have some catching up to do, but we do need the right infrastructure in the right places in order to catch up as well. So that it's not.
Sorry, I'm rushing you on there, Will. We've just got another item to come as well, so sorry about that.
Sorry, Chair, could I just on that then?
Very quickly, Martin.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate Will's caution that things might change, but I mean, I wonder who put the press release out in March on the Kirklees website that said thousands of people living in Kirklees can look forward to being able to leave their recycled glass at the curbside. We know you're misgiving curbside glass, so we're bringing it back. We've listened to you. At the moment, that sounds like an empty vessel, doesn't it?
I can come back on that. Well, it is coming back. We've definitely got the commitment on the trial. Like I said, pushing ahead with all these other things, I think would be unwise and going contrary to what the feedback is we've got from communities. While they have said it's important, how they collect it is more important to them than ever. And I think that commitment was also made with the view that the Environment Bill would have landed, we'd have had that certainty, and there was not really, then the pandemic would have been over. So that whole mix of things has created some uncertainty, but we definitely want to press ahead with early delivery on other elements of the waste strategy, and also getting the delivery on this glass trial, so people can see that commitment there. They can see the service coming back, and they can also have further influence over how the shape of that is moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to John. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Chair. I'm glad both Will and Martin were saying coming back rather than coming home, because it's slightly sad this week. But anyway, just on glass collection, I've got a number of things. I just wonder, Will, if we could consider whether when we do start bringing glass collection back, we could give people choice about the type of receptacle, because there will be some people who will welcome and need a bin, so that's the alcoholics among us. There'll be others who perhaps don't have that many bottles and would find it unnecessary, and perhaps a caddy would be more suitable for them. So just a thought that let's not just assume in one location one size fits all, if that's at all possible. I don't know. The other comment on glass collection, I don't know the answer to this at all, but there are a variety of bring sites across the district, some of which are hosted by you know, sports clubs, pubs, all sorts of different places. I don't know whether they receive any income from being a bring site. We just need to have, if they do, we just need to have in sight the impact it might have, and I'm thinking particularly of small sport clubs and things like that. So let's just bear that in mind. Just on the shameful importation of foreign water, I know that the plastic that is used by Shepley Spring is recycled, so it is you know, it's recycled plastic that is used in the water bottles. I don't know about Harrogate water, but it's worth checking that out, because again, it would seem a bit daft to be promoting the use of bottled water that isn't recycled when we have on our doorstep a fabulous company that, you know, does provide that and does use recycled plastic. Just on litter bins, we certainly in my ward, we've been using some of our ward budgets to replace and increase the number of litter bins. So it doesn't have to necessarily always be the council that initiates this kind of increase in litter bins, because we recognise in our ward the impact, as I think Will said, about more people being out and about and more people walking, and therefore generating more litter. So it's an opportunity for all of you on the call to think about whether you want to use a little bit of your ward budget, perhaps to increase the number of litter bins in your ward. We talked a little bit about ambitions and comparisons with our peers. I don't want us to compare ourselves with our peers, to be honest. I want us to compare ourselves with the best. So when we talk about ambitions, I want us to be ambitious. So I'd be dissatisfied if all we were doing was trying to be as good as our peers or as good as similar councillors to us. We should be looking for who's the best and seeing what we need to do in terms of what leap we need, try and be better than them. Certainly that's my definition of ambitious. Couple of other little things, and this is my second opportunity to go through this strategy, because I had this at leading members, and you know, just want to compliment Sue and Natalie for getting the same messages across today as you did last time. So well done.
Consistent.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's good. So I have already commented on a load of things, but a few more that have come to light. One, and Nadine, you'll remember this one, the problems we've had with trailer sizes. So this would give us an opportunity to perhaps look again at the appropriate size of trailers in our policy and recycling sites, because that has caused some angst over the last couple of years, and it's probably a way to resolve that. Not much mention, or as much mentioned today as I would have thought there would have been, about fly tipping, and particularly the speed of removal of fly tipped items. We consistently need to get better at that. And the one I worry about most is fly tipped items on private property, where we sometimes struggle to find out who the owner is. I think we ought to be developing a policy where if we can't find the owner, we remove that waste, or even if we can find the owner, we give them so long to remove it, or we go in and charge them. Because I think, you know, and I can think of several instances and examples where that waste's been there for an awful long time. And, you know, although I've been nudging and badgering people to do something about it, the response you're getting back is we can't find the landowner, or it's on private property, it's not our responsibility. But at the end of the day, it is having an impact on the sense of place. It's having an impact on people's physical and mental health, and it's, you know, it maybe will attract some of Gwen's rats if there's quaver packets there. So we do need to take that a little more seriously than perhaps we do today. We are quite good, and I'd be complimentary about the team about trying to tackle fly tipping on land that we are responsible for, but it's more so the land that we're not responsible for that perhaps we need to up the ante on. A couple of others. Again, when it's not so much fly tipping, whether it's fly tipping litter or it's a bit of both, the one thing that really bugs me is when we have utility companies doing work and they leave the place untidy. We'll all have experience of rollout of broadband in some shape or form within our wards. Not only do they leave a mess when they don't necessarily put the roads back perfectly, but what frustrates me is you go to any cabinet and you'll find all sorts of bits of wire lying around on the floor outside them because they never clear up after themselves. They never tidy up. Similarly, there are always cones left around, road signs, you know, those little temporary fences and stuff that just clutter the bloody place up. And I get really frustrated having to try and chase to get these things tidied up and cleaned up. And it's also with our own employees or contractors we employ, that we don't seem to have the right culture in place, that there is a care for the environment and, you know, a desire to make sure that I leave the place as neat and tidy as it was when I came along. And I would broaden that out actually in terms of culture and say there is a challenge for the council in terms of its employees about taking pride in their area. So if I am out doing a visit, I'm doing something, do I look around me and see if there's anything that needs tidying up whilst I'm there, or picking up, or whatever it might be, or reporting? I mean, one example I'll share with you that I think is an example of this. If you go into St. Peter's Gardens in the centre of Huddersfield, in the centre of the gardens, there is a lamp post, a Victorian or Edwardian lamp standard right in the centre, with obviously has glass around the light. one of the glass panes is broken. I've tried to get that repaired, I've flagged it, and the answer I get back is they're looking at, you know, the blueprint for Huddersfield Town and the improvements they're doing, blah, 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 blah. It still has a broken pane of glass. And I think that is emblematic of the lack of culture, the lack of care, the lack of response in terms of our care about the place where we live. And we need to make sure that this waste strategy is embedded across the whole of the council. We all start taking pride in areas. We all start tidying up. We all start thinking it's our responsibility. I don't want to see road signs lying around and cluttering the place. And in effect, it's fly tipping. It's been left behind and not collected. So that's a bit of a rant on that one. My final 2 points, and I raised this last time we talked about it, but it still doesn't seem to come through in the presentation or the strategy, is the role of, and I'll get this wrong, and Nadine will correct me, is homes and neighbourhoods now, isn't it? K&H. I always get that the wrong way around. Because they have a role to play. They have a very, very big role to play. Not only do they have responsibility for some of our estates and our properties, but also the building services side of the operation, are sometimes the culprits for not perhaps cleaning up and tidying up well enough after themselves as well. So we ought to be emphasising that with them. And then my final one, and we've talked a lot about education on this call so far. Prior to the pandemic, I was taking groups of my residents down to the recycling centre in town, and taking them on the tour, which is great in terms of educating people. It'd be good if we could kind of nudge Suez to bring that back again, so that we can start. Because I had a visit set up when the pandemic kicked in. We had to cancel, so I'd love to get back to doing that again, because that is all about taking influential people within the community who will then cascade that message back. And I think it'll leave it there, Chair, if I can. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware of time as well, so I thought what I might do is just try and get the comments in from the other panel members that have got their hands up, and then if we get a response overall, if that's okay. So Yusra, Councillor Idle and Chris Friend, I'm going to take all your comments together. So Yusra.
Thank you, Sue and Will, for your report there. Just picking up some points, and in fear of not repeating myself, I'm just going to try and whiz through them as quick as I can. I think education is a very important aspect that you've already mentioned, and I would like to see more on that, which you are doing, what to recycle in and what bin. And I think it's very important to continue that. Another thing I picked up is in line with the contractors, I think someone mentioned. I think it's very important to understand what the contractors are wanting from yourself and what you're wanting from the contractor, and you leading that rather than them. In terms of the wider community, I'd like to see what organisations sort of picked up in that, because organisations create a lot of big waste as well. Are there big organisations in our area, and can we work with them as well as the wider community in general? In terms of reuse shops, that's very up and coming. I know certainly something that a lot of people are looking at, whether it's furniture, whether it's clothing, whether it's recycling glass bottles. And I'm just wondering whether we've considered, I don't know if you do clothing as an aspect, because there's a lot of financial viability in that as well, and recycling clothing in some way as well. So I'm not sure if you've explored that aspect of recycling. In terms of bins as well, obviously when the pandemic hit, there was certain points where people were going out for takeaway food and then dumping their waste outside the cars. I think it would be really good to kind of, if businesses are going to prop up, which is fantastic to see, to have sort of bins not far from them, so then if our people are getting a takeaway sort of meal, they have got somewhere to deposit the rubbish from that. And I think, yeah, I think that's mostly it, really. But I will stop Tara on my comments.
Thanks. Thank you, Yusra. Councillor Idle.
Thank you, Chair. I want to come back to Councillor Miller with her education, and exactly how we're telling our residents exactly what they can and can't put in the bin. I mean, I would welcome all the cabinet members getting the marigolds on and delving into the bins in Gorka, but it's got to be more than that. And have we got a record of what are the top 10, for example, of what contaminates a green bin? I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much indeed for having me. Second bite.
Thank you. And Chris?
Hi. I acknowledge this is an outline strategy document, and I think we've been right down a lot of granularity during this discussion. But I would expect it to have seen a few more specifics. I know sort of during this dialogue, Andrew mentioned aspirational issues and Martin mentioned KPIs. Certainly when I was in business, I used to see a strategy document and it would have KPIs. It wouldn't get passed as a strategy document without KPIs. And they would have to be very specifically smart KPIs that could be really measured. I just don't quite get how you would actually work out whether this strategy had achieved its objectives or not without having some KPIs. Looking through this briefing paper, you under 3.2, it talks about does not deliver to all the environmental ambitions. What are those ambitions like? I mean, I don't really understand what they would be. They surely got to be measurable in some way. And then when you start talking about climate change and air quality, it says that strategy plays a key role in tackling both of those, and the measures within this strategy will have a reduction upon them. Well, I think, if you want a strategy document, we should have some specifics in these areas. It's not a business case, it's just some measurable objectives. And I think without those, I would be very cautious about saying we could actually make any recommendation on a document like this, because you don't know what you're going to get at the end of the day. That's my 5 pence.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, Councillor Nahid, I can see you've got your hand up. If officers want to respond to those as well, then we've got to move on to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Harpreet. Just a quick one. My name is Nahid John, not Nadeem, just as it's written. So I know it's a mistake. And I agree the strategy has to be embedded. All of the things that you're hitting, everyone has said, all of the discussions we've had in the background, is always difficult in a strategy document to include, because otherwise it'd be a dossier. And we continue to improve, to include, and to listen. And I'm going to leave it there simply because the officers may want to pick up some salient points. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to come in terms of the officers?
I can come in. I'll be very brief as well, conscious of time.
Thank you.
And there was a lot covered there. I think some really good points come through there at the end. I think Councillor Taylor's point on what's the right fit and model. There are different vehicles and different mechanisms that empty them. So we have to be conscious about efficiencies and economies of scale. So maybe we look at a neighbourhood type model as opposed to individual house on the same street. But that's the sort of thing we want to get from the trial, is to understand what works where. And it may be that we have inner urban collections that are a certain model and outer urban collections that are different. But at the moment, we don't know how that works. So we want to get that information in real life. The Bring sites, no one gets any funding for them. They're a zero cost to the authority, so that there'll be no risk at that. The fly tipping, that came back to scrutiny earlier this year. We did this fly tipping trial. We got the response time down from reporting to removal to 3 days. That team has been moved around a bit to support other COVID measures, but when it is established, it is doing really well, and that's the commitment that we'll be embedding that next year as an annual baseline budget service. So we'll continue to that. We've used mobile CCTV in the meantime. We've got a number of other trials that we've concluded, and we'll be wrapping all that into a much better service coming forward. Just moving through education, I think came through really strongly, and it's something that we very much support. With Councillor Ideal, I'd welcome if you want to sort of come along with some of our recycling advisors just to see what they actually do, you know, and sort of live it. Hopefully we can talk to Squares and get some of that the MRF back open again, so we can go and look at it. But it's much more than that. There's multiple visits. We try and talk people through it. We've got multiple language approaches as well. We try and do as much as possible to help people understand. Taking the point on the bins again, very much, yep. We need to rationalise where they are, what they are, and what we're collecting from them. Moving through on specific KPIs, I think we have those sat within the business cases. I think you're right, we might need to lift and summarise some of there. They're threaded throughout the document, but it's perhaps not obvious as to what specific commitment we're making and how they're contributing to them. Some of them will be in the business cases, some of them will be because we don't know yet, because we haven't gone into the business cases. So we have to be honest of where we can commit, where we are committing, and where it might be more of an aspirational outcome. But we can have a think about how we sort of reword that in the document potentially. And that's whistle stop answers.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Obviously, some of the key points there about re-emphasising circular economy in the document, reinforcing education, which has come up a lot. Points around on the stats, KPIs and stats, which obviously would be quite useful, and whether we can say it's aspirational or not at this stage, given that a lot of other areas that are doing this as well, so it's just worth thinking about. I think the point around fly tipping, littering, and needs going to be like she's going on about it again is something that I raise again and again and again. I'm glad to see there's some reviews coming in, but I do think it's so important and it says a lot about what people think about the place that they live as well. So, I really want to sort of re-emphasise that as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Anyone who was here for item 7, except for the panel members, can leave if they want to, and we're going to move on to item 8. So appreciate all your time that you've given us today. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everybody. Going to move on to item 8 now, quickly. We've got Simon Taylor with us. We've got Peter Thompson. I can't see your full name. Sorry, Peter. Yes, it is Thompson. And we've got Councillor Firth and Councillor McBride. I know Councillor Firth has to go at 3 o'clock for a meeting. So I don't know if you want to, and maybe Councillor McBride as well. So I don't know if you want to say anything at the beginning before we start the presentation.
Goodbye.
No, let's hear.
That's all right.
Yep,
Councillor, nothing. Yeah, Councillor Firth. He's probably he's there. I can see his picture, but he might not be hearing me.
Is that better?
Oh, can hear you, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Martin. It's making me so welcome. It's a pity that we have another meeting, both Councillor Ryan and myself. And obviously it were very important what you were discussing earlier, and because I've been listening to it for quite a while. Perhaps we may have to come another day. But I'm here you want to have a look at the town investment plan, what's happening at the blueprint, and I'm sure Simon and Peter will give you a run through. We will stay as long as absolutely possible, and then perhaps we'll have to have some questions. But if that's okay with you, Chair, we can lock on with, unless you want anything to say, Peter.
No.
Okay, perfect. All right then, Simon.
Good afternoon, panel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Simon Taylor. I'm Head of Town Centre Programmes, and I've got my colleague here, Peter Thompson, who's the programme lead for Dewsbury. So between us, we're going to give you some oversight to the key projects in Dewsbury. You've already got a report, and there was an appended sort of high-level programme for that. I've got a presentation that I'm going to run through. It's a bit variable about how these presentations go. You might want to stop me halfway. You might want to stop me a lot of times throughout it, but I'll try and run through it as swiftly as I possibly can, because really and truly it's just summarising the report, and I'm sure you want to have a discussion rather than listen to another officer talking at you. So I'm just going to bring it up on screen. 2 minutes while I sort out the IT, if that's okay. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'll just put it onto slideshow if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So this is around an update, and I thought it'd probably be a good idea to start with some sort of key sort of highlights of what has been delivered so far that really impacts on the future of Dewsbury. And I sort of really want to bring to attention to the panel a number of key initiatives, and they are education based, but they are really vitally important for the future of Dewsbury. Springfield Centre, which is just outside of the town centre, just on the other side of the ring road on Halifax Road. Really important for drawing in a younger population. And that's been open for 2.5 to 3 years now, but vitally important to sort of making sure that the town centre has a reason to be visited by a large number of people. And that's the important factor for the future of town centres as a whole, as we start to see a change in sort of shopping habits and a change in the way people use the town centres. More recently, is the reopening of Pioneer House, and that's an annex to the college. That is now completely refurbished. You'll see some sort of visuals there that show how that is being refitted out and actually how the heritage of that building has been brought to light. Fully understand that it's a frustrating project because it's taken many years to come to fruition, but it is now open and it is a very, very important part of the next step in the history of Dewsbury Town Centre. Big investment, quite a lot of partnership working in that. Smaller scale, but still important. A reconfiguration of works around the Dewsbury train station. We've now got a much more attractive gateway into the town centre, and that's something that we want to build on. And that's not to say that we haven't got some small things going on as well. So there are some small programmes at the moment. There's a picture there of the sort of Anthony Gormley sculpture, which was recently installed in the town centre. So there are things going on. They're the sort of the bigger ones, the station and the 2 college elements. Just want to sort of move quickly on to sort of highlight some of the smaller programmes that maybe go a little bit unnoticed on a day-to-day basis, because Peter and his team have been running some projects and programmes over the last couple of years. One around the Dewsbury Townscape Heritage Initiative, and that's looking at bringing back some properties into decent use, improving shop fronts. Dewsbury Heritage Action Zone as well, that's a sort of an important funding stream. That's worth about £2 million of sort of investment, and we're trying to work with private sector owners to spend that money. Last year as well, we got £750,000 from the Town Fund accelerated grant package, which was a bit of a forerunner to the town deal that was just announced a few weeks ago, and that's gone into small projects, and we managed to spend all that on Dewsbury related works, not physical always, but there was some skills related work there with the colleges as well. And then on top of that, there's been an ongoing programme of sort of small repairs, changes to street lighting, those sorts of activities that the Highway Services has been leading on. And there's 3 photographs there of properties that we've helped on the way, and there's a sign that things can improve, but it does need some help to get there. So you've got properties on Commercial Street at the top, the Black Bull that opened last year, and Emojis is at the bottom, and that's a property that will open to the public next week. So all being done with a mixture of grant funding and private sector intervention. So small things, but very, very important. I just wanted to go on to outline the Dewsbury Town Investment Plan. So on the 8th of June, we had an announcement that Dewsbury would receive £24.8 million of an investment from central government, and that followed a really long process of drawing up an investment plan with public involvement in that. Lots of work from a core town board that we set up specifically to help steer this through. That included the local MP, Mark Eastwood, included Shabir Pandor as a leader of the council, and a number of other community groups and business interests. We submitted that plan back in January, got the results in June. We are now firmly on our way to access that funding, and we've got 9 projects that are identified in that. And there's a really strong overlap between the town investment plan and what we want to do in the town centre, because some of these projects are sort of covering a wider geographical area. So projects like Dewsbury Market, the arcade, proposals for a new town park, the cultural programme, the revival grant scheme, stuff around Daisy Hill, they're all town centre projects. So there's a massive overlap there between council ambitions and the board ambitions. To try and make today as simple as possible, we've identified what are our sort of core town centre projects, and these are the projects that we'll be delivering between now and 2025, early part of 2026. And they're the ones that we think are going to make the biggest impact to the town centre in terms of change. We're still holding very dear some of the sort of core objectives from the Dewsbury Blueprint, which is about recognising heritage, creating spaces for people, family-friendly town, so that we're attracting a broader range of people into the town centre and covering daytime and nighttime activities. But these 7 projects here will be the mainstay of delivery over the next few years. And around the edges, there will be smaller programmes that Peter and his team will deliver, building on that Heritage Action Zone work and the THI initiatives as well. But these are the core projects. These are the ones that are going to make the biggest impact. I want to go through each one, because I think part of the remit for today was to understand the route to delivery. The number one project for us at the moment is Dewsbury Market. We've done a number of consultation exercises around the blueprint and as part of the town investment plan, and the market is always cited as a popular project to deliver, bring the market back to Dewsbury in its full glory. People do remember how vibrant and important it was, and it has declined over the years, but that's not uncommon for a market town like Dewsbury to have a declining market. It needs to adapt with the times. In terms of where we are with it, we've just finished a consultation exercise on the stage 2 designs, just moving into the stage 3 stage, which is a bit more detail to that. We've completed all the feasibility work. We got cabinet approval in March to move forward with the project, outlining some of the costs there. We'll keep developing the designs right to the end of this year. That development helps us refine costs, and that helps us also to feed into a very detailed business case that we need to submit to government now for a number of these projects to access the town fund sort of finances. Without that, we can't actually draw down the grant funds. So we're working those business cases up in parallel on many of these sort of projects. What I would say for us, Dewsbury Market is a fast track project. It's a priority project, and we'll be pushing forward on this one, the arcade, and 1 or 2 others, to make sure that there's plenty of activity in and around the town centre over the next few years. In terms of
Chair, we're going to have to go now. gonna have to go. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you for your time. Thanks for that. Cheers.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Just in terms of the next stages, importantly, we need to get on site as quickly as possible. We're looking now for appointing the contractor sometime early in next year, with a view to construction starting in the middle of 2022 and then opening in 2023. Running in parallel to this is a decant of the market programme as well. So we're very keen not to lose the market traders. We want them to continue in the town. We're putting together a strategy so that those businesses continue trading within the town centre, albeit in a slightly different location on street. So hopefully we will retain some of those traders. We may well lose them, but actually it's about continuity here and keeping that market alive during that construction phase. So that's the market. I think that's probably our sort of most exciting project. We have also been working very hard on Dewsbury Arcade. A couple of photographs there show the top one is actually activity, as you can see it now. We've got a construction team from K&H already inside doing the early soft strip and stabilisation works. That's going to continue to sort of the autumn this year. We are also working to identify the best management option for the finished product as well. I'm going through a number of work streams on that, looking at what happens if the council run it, looking at community interest groups and a variety of other options. And we'll need to come to a conclusion on that fairly soon, and hopefully we can move that forward to Cabinet later this year, stabilisation. And it is a very old property. It is a heritage property as well. And it is vitally important to the community that this gets brought back into use as quickly as it possibly can. It is a very popular project. Towards the end of that process, I'm going to appoint a business advisor, and then we're hopeful that this will open in the summer of 2023, and you'll see businesses engaging in activity, retail, small workspaces, that type of activity during that summer. That's the arcade. In terms of the town park, we've just finished consultation exercise on that. I don't know if people have seen the video. I think maybe we haven't really got time today to play that video, but we go online onto the Dewsbury Blueprint site. There is a link to a YouTube video showing you all of the latest designs on there. We've got a number of designs that we're laying out, some including the Walsh building being retained, which is customer service building, and some without it. We need to make that decision at some point, but this is all part and parcel of going through the design iterations to delivery. So the town park is a much more long-term project. We're hoping that this will open sometime in 2025. That table there sets out what we think is the programme at the moment. Some key milestones in there are going to planning early part of 2022, and then hopefully get the construction team on site early in 2024, with an opening date of 2025. So it's quite disruptive, I suspect, this project, because it covers quite a wide area, but it's really important. It becomes a showcase project for the whole town. It creates that space that people want to come. It's that family space that everybody is craving in both of our big town centres. In terms of residential and the living town concept, we are focusing on two particular elements. Geographically, most of our efforts are going into the Daisy Hill area. I've called this Daisy Hill and Field House. The Field House is at the very edge of the Daisy Hill part of the town centre, directly opposite the train station, if you know it. Field House is a private sector-led development. It's very difficult to get residential development underway in Dewsbury Town Centre. There's lots of gaps in funding. We know as well that we need to lift the quality bar. There's too many sort of properties that have been converted, not of a desired standard. And we're working with a company called Mood Developments and a guy called Peter Mason, who's part of the Dewsbury Town Deal Board, in trying to bring forward Fieldhouse as a showcase apartment development. Now he's quite a long way down the delivery route. He's already got planning approval. He's already got a number of funding streams in place. The Town Deal will support this project as well. So we're hoping that he keeps on track at the moment. He's doing a lot of design work to bring forward the next phases. Looks like he'll be tendering for works early part of next year, with a view to construction starting sort of late summer next year as well, with an opening later in 2023. So that's a really important project, because if we want to set some standards, and I mean standards in terms of quality, heritage, space as well, and put these properties out to the market, then this type of collaborative approach between the public sector and the private sector is the way to do it. The Daisy Hill area is a long-term regeneration project that could take up to 10, 15 years to realise. We do have some funding that comes from the Town Deal process. That will go into land assembly. We need to pick up properties in that Daisy Hill area, put together a decent residential development site, and create some platforms to inject around about 200 units into that area. Now, this is quite an ambitious project. That's why it's going to take a long time. That's why developments such as Fieldhouse are really helpful, because it will start that process moving forward. So the council is very much actively involved in starting to pick up properties. We've already acquired a number of buildings and areas of land. We always needed more money to bring that about. So that will be the focus of this early phase of work in that area. So it'll be land assembly, bringing in some meanwhile uses as well into some of the buildings that we acquire along the way, and then taking that forward into delivery after 2025. Another important programme, it will be the Creative Culture Programme. That's firmly embedded into the Town Deal as well, and culture and art were always part of the Dewsbury Blueprint. At the moment, this is a two-pronged programme of events. There's a physical aspect to this. There's the setting up of the Union Arts Centre at 15 Union Street. Brigantia, who are a sort of an organisation involved in local art groups, creative, I can't remember the previous name, but they are sort of very active, and they're creating a creative hub. They're already present. We've been able to activate the first phase of this project already in 15 Union Street. They want to develop that further, take on a longer term lease for this, and create a real hub around community arts and creative industries. As I've said before, some of that early work is already done. The next stage will be to acquire some extra bits of property so they can expand and hopefully bring this to completion the last quarter of 2024. Very important part of the makeup of Dewsbury. It's consolidating some of those creative elements that we know exist in that area. It's a very good link into the Arts Council that have been backing Brigantia with one or two sort of smaller scale projects as well. The other part of this programme is an events and cultural programme. And internally, this is a council-led element to it. We've now been able to secure funding to put together a programme of events. Now, that's really important because bringing people into the town to help them shop, visit, eat food, drink, requires a reason to be there. And having a very detailed events programme can help that immensely. But we've managed to attract quite a lot of revenue funding from the town deal to put that in place. And that will be rolled out over a number of years up to 2024. Where we are with that is Catherine Davis, who is our cultural lead, is setting up that programme with her team. And it will take a number of events forward each year, covering different areas of the arts and cultural areas. One of the other elements that we're already working on, we've already set this up in a smaller guise, is to ensure that we can help some of the existing building owners bring their buildings up to scratch. We already have a building revival grant. It's small scale at the moment. We've got a couple of grants that we've approved, delivered on one of those, and we've got another 6 in the pipeline. This is about shop fronts, it's about upper floors, it's about heritage buildings as well. As part of the town deal, we've managed to add more funding into that to stretch this out over a number of years. And that grant, it's difficult to give a programme of how that will work because it depends on the take up. That will be delivered between now and the early part of 2026. But as I say, that pipeline has already been identified for the early years. We've got 6 key projects that we could be working on. So it's beginning to get some momentum, that one. The final one on my list is not a council project, and it's not a town deal project either, but it is a very important part of regenerating and renewing Dewsbury Town Centre. Wicker, through their Transforming Cities Fund programme, committed £8 million to a new bus station. There's some visuals there, which unfortunately are sort of an early sort of incarnation of what this might look like. I was hopeful that the consultation exercise for this would have started by today, but unfortunately it hasn't. It's been put back to the 19th of July. So I'm not able to share with you the latest sort of architectural drawings. But the programme that we're on there is obviously going into a consultation stage from the 19th onwards. Planning applications early part of 2022, construction early part of 2023, and then a year's worth of construction work and into early part of 2024. I've pressed the end button there a bit too quickly, but that's the project. I know that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the Dewsbury programme, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a flavour, and there's some detail in there as well that you might want to pick up on. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little bit. Everyone can just go on mute while speaking. Just perfect. Yeah, perfect. Great stuff. All right. So members, just raise your hands if you've got a question. So John.
Thanks, Chair. Simon, can you take the presentation down so we can all see each other again? Thanks, Simon. As you know, I've had some involvement in this and seen some of this as it's developed. So I'll try and keep my comments short. I think I don't have a particular problem with anything that's being proposed here. It's great to see that we've managed to work with the government and secure that funding, and let's get on with stuff. But I do have a number of questions. And the first one is, it feels like on the back of the pandemic and the changes that we've seen, that has almost accelerated in the changes in retail. We don't seem to be doing anything to reduce the amount of retail capacity, yet we know that the amount of retail is likely to decline in all towns and high streets. And I just worry that what we're actually doing with the arcade is creating something which could end up being a white elephant, because there aren't enough tenants to occupy all of the shops and retail spaces that we have within Dewsbury. And the problem for Dewsbury is its proximity to White Rose. And why would people come into Dewsbury when there's a better shopping experience and free car parking just up the road? So I do worry about the arcade, if I'm honest. I think it's a fabulous building, and I'm glad to see that we're repairing and retaining it, but I'm not sure that there is necessarily going to be the growth in retail that would take up that, whilst at the same time occupying all of the other empty shop fronts that we have across Dewsbury. So I just wonder whether we have done the work to rethink and reflect on what the last 18 months, 2 years has done to us, rather than, you know, pushing ahead with everything we thought to do. I mean, the work that's being done at the moment by K&H to stabilise the building anyway would be necessary, whatever usage we had for it. Again, the Business Revival Fund, the pictures that you put up, I think, quote, show one of the shops that was one of the early transformations, but then that business closed down. So we also need to be careful, again, about if we are looking at supporting other businesses to receive grants to transform their shop frontages, that actually that business is sustainable. Because the last thing we want to do is transform the shop front to an empty shop front, because again, that's wasting that grant money. I love the idea of the town park. You're absolutely right. There is a need for a greener space in the centre of Dewsbury. I do like the idea of removing the Walsh building if we can. There's another building in the town I'd love to remove, which is the other side of the town hall, but I don't think we're going to get there. My worry, and it didn't come out in the presentation, but one of the big challenges or issues we face in Dewsbury Town Centre at the moment is on-street drinking and antisocial behaviour. And I think there needs to be more thought in, if we are going to create a town park and a big green space, how do we do it in a way that will be attractive to families and people, and not be yet another space for on-street drinking and potentially antisocial behaviour. So I know that there is discussions ongoing with the police, but I think we need to focus much more heavily on how do we future-proof the town centre from these issues. And I'm not sure I have the answer to that, but I think that's something that we need to be looking at and talking about. I love the work that's going on with Fieldhouse, and again, Daisy Hill is part of that antisocial on-street drinking problem. And I think whilst that on-street drinking is still happening in Daisy Hill, you will struggle to get that developed as an attractive residential area. So almost the first thing we need to do, it's lovely all this money's coming downstream to help us improve the town centre, but until we deal with that antisocial behaviour and on-street drinking, you will continue to struggle to lift the town centre. I recall a conversation I had with an unnamed senior officer who spent some time in the town centre with his wife, and commented to me afterwards that his wife said afterwards that she had felt unsafe in the town centre, and that was during the day. So I think that just gives you a scale of the challenge that we have. I love all the stuff we're doing. You know, I'm fully supportive. I do worry about creating more retail space at a time when the demand for retail space is shrinking, is going to be a big challenge, and we might need to rethink. But I think the first thing we need to do, and I don't know where we get the resources from or what the answer is, but until we can tackle that feeling unsafe and those unsavoury characters drinking on the streets and the antisocial behaviour during the day, never mind the evenings, Dewsbury will continue to struggle. And Chair, I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you want to come back, Simon?
You're on mute, Simon.
Few points that will come back on. I share your views about retail. I don't think our strategy is about creating more retail space. Certainly our strategy for Dewsbury, for the arcade, is to help bring in some smaller business. I don't know, Peter, if you want to just elaborate on the work that you've been doing to bring in sort of other businesses, because it's not all about retail, if at all.
No, it's going to be a combination of services as well, and food and beverage offer. So it's about creating some sort of unique environment, a bit of a destination. So we won't be turning the clock back for 20 years and having it all as retail, because it just simply won't work as that. Yeah, and you're quite right. So there'll be a mix of things in there. And those that do retail to people that come into the shop, I suspect most, if not all of those, will also be trading online as well. So it'll be a combination of both. And then there'll be some service-based type activities in there, so things you have to come in for to have done to you. And it's very much about sort of that local feel to the place. And I absolutely agree that yes, we have to address those general issues of antisocial behaviour and make it a family-friendly place that people feel happy to come to and feel safe in. Hopefully the arcade will have that additional benefit of being an enclosed space and being managed as a space, so that hopefully that will help as well.
I think just coming back on the issue of, I'll come to the sort of antisocial behaviour issue, because I think that'll be a theme that runs through the conversation that we have that sort of starts this afternoon. I perfectly agree with your point on the business revival, the grant revival scheme that we've been running. We are very conscious that businesses set up and fail. Some of this is about improving the buildings as much as anything else. And there's lots of heritage buildings in the town that are in a fairly poor state. I know that one on Commercial Street has failed as a business, but the improvements physically are sort of immense. And we want to make sure that we retain some of those heritage elements as much as possible. But I do take your point about being very careful about which businesses we do choose, because we want them to last into the future, not just take the money and fail. On the town park, yeah, I think it is a really important part of a modern town centre now to have green spaces and places where people can hang out with their friends if you're young, be there as a family. The antisocial behaviour issue comes up time and time again, not just for Dewsbury, but for the town centres as well. I've been going around talking to a number of ward members about the smaller centres that we've got in Kirklees, Holmfirth, Cleckheaton, Heckman White, those types of places. This issue comes up all the time. I think it is pretty pronounced in Dewsbury, and some of those experiences you relayed back to us a few moments ago are not unknown by us. I'm not sure what the solution is. We are working quite hard as an organisation with the police and some community groups to try and tackle this. Council itself has helped the police resource the town centre with a permanent police presence. Whether that, we're still waiting to see whether or not that is providing the results that we hoped it would. But it is a serious problem, and it is ruining the perception of the town centre as a whole. A lot of this, I think, is around not having a particularly high footfall during the day and evening, which makes Dewsbury feel quite lonely. I think that early evening part is quite a difficult time. I've certainly left the town hall of an evening and found myself being the only person moving from the town hall to the station. And that could be quite unnerving, particularly if you're a young person, an old person, or a woman feeling vulnerable in those situations. So we need, if we can bring in more footfall, make the place feel more vibrant, then those feelings of isolation might go away. But that's going to take some time. I don't have the solution right now, but it is definitely an issue that needs to be tackled, and it's multi-agency as much as anything else. The council won't solve it on its own, and nor will the police. We need to come together on this issue.
Yeah, John, do you want to follow up?
You're on mute, John.
Yeah, my dog was barking, so I went on mute. I was just going to say something that my worry is that unless we get on top of this, it doesn't matter how much money we throw at the town centre, we're just throwing good money after bad. So much as I'm very supportive of the ambitions for the town centre and the plans, it will all come to naught if we don't get on top of this issue. And I think that needs to be the #1 priority at the moment for the town centre, much as all of the other stuff is fantastic and wonderful. Until we are dealing with that issue, and it is, you're right, Simon, you know, you may get instance of it in Huddersfield or other smaller towns, but it is much more visible and much more of an issue in Dewsbury and other towns across Kirklees. And until we get on top of that issue, the investment will come to naught.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just going to, before I bring in Councillor Hussain and Chris, Andrew Bird, who's one of our other co-optees, he had to leave earlier, but he made a point that I'm just going to read out. He says, it'd be good to hear much more about the soft elements of these projects. How do we get new traders in market, new tenants for the arcade? We are much too interested in hardware, so showcase, etc., but not the much harder job of attracting startups. Do you want to just come back on that?
So I can't hear anyone at the moment.
Peter, you need to come in on that point.
I can, yeah. Sorry, it's just gone frozen. Yeah, so yeah. Well, we're working very closely with embryonic group called the Arcade Dewsbury Group, and we've been looking at doing a sort of early marketing campaign. They've set up a website, and that's started to generate some early interest already from businesses in Dewsbury and people thinking about setting up new businesses that may be suitable for going in the arcade. So some of that work's already ongoing, albeit this is obviously at least a year and a half away before, you know, the place opens, but we have started to do some of that work already. So in terms of the market, yeah, I mean, I think that's a general issue across all markets at the moment. The general age, I think, of most market traders is getting older, and there's certainly a challenge there, I think, for markets operations to get more newer traders into the markets that sell perhaps more stuff that's perhaps more up to the minute. Perhaps that's the way of putting it. But I'm sure they'll be looking at that as part of their ongoing plan. And I know certainly in terms of Dewsbury, there are particular sectors and types of trader and types of good where they have identified a gap where they will be actively seeking to attract people in from other markets in this region to come to Dewsbury. And luckily, once we get the plans approved and we have a definite proposition, we can go out then and actively market and hopefully target those companies, traders we want to come into the market.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, yeah, that's really interesting. Quite clearly, there is an offer out there, isn't there, in markets that is attracting people, younger people, not just as customers, but as stall holders as well. And I guess it's just getting that right fit for Dewsbury as well, isn't it? Chris.
You caught me off guard there. I wasn't ready. Thank you for that. I found that quite interesting, very interesting, in fact. One of my original questions was going to be how cohesive is this strategy, because I hadn't actually seen a map of how things fitted together in Dewsbury. I've been in the area for about 4 years, and I must confess I've only ever been to Dewsbury once. That was a very fleeting visit. If this actually does come off, and you do get all this development done, which I'm assuming you will get there, to me, this has a lot more attraction than what John was talking about with the White Rose Centre. I think a lot of us are really sick and tired of these big shopping malls where there are feature lists, there's lots of people. Quite a lot of them are getting quite tired now. I'd rather go to an arcade. In fact, when I go into Huddersfield, which is not that often at the moment because of COVID, but the arcades there in Huddersfield are so attractive in comparison. If I go to Leeds, I go to the arcade because it's got a bit of history there and it's attractive. Now, maybe because I'm old, that's why it attracts me. But I think people are looking much more of a social, personal experience now. So I think this is a great strategy. I really do hope that you get the retail elements in there. But what I would say is a lot of what goes on is image. Now, the reason I've not visited Dewsbury is because of what I've been told. So I think you've actually got a big PR campaign needed to up the image. As John said, what I've been told as a newbie in the area is Dewsbury's a bit scruffy, it's a bit risky to go there at certain times, go during the day if you're going. And that just embedded itself in my mind. So I think, if you want to really make this pay off, needs some image change there somewhere. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Simon, Peter, do you want to come back on that?
So very, very, very briefly, thank you for that, Chris. I think on the marketing side, this is an issue that has been identified by us. It's been an issue identified by the town board, an issue identified by some of the community groups as well. So through the town board, we are hopeful that we can start to piece together a better marketing strategy to promote Dewsbury in a much better light. But I think you're absolutely right. Perceptions of Dewsbury are not good. So if it's particularly if you're a local person within that sort of Kirklees area, I'm not sure what the perception is outside of it. But you're right, and we do need to break that, otherwise we won't get the visitors. So I think through the town board, there's a great opportunity to start that piece of work and get them to lead on that as champions for the town.
Can I just add there? Sorry. In terms of the market, sorry, I didn't put my hand up. In terms of the market, we did carry out a particular piece of research last year about people's attitudes to the market, why they come, why they don't come, what would make them come, and the very encouraging and positive response we got from a large number of people from that survey was, yes, if you carry out some of the proposals that you are proposing to do in terms of investment, that would make us come. And there was quite a high percentage of people said, yeah, I would come back. I'd come and shop into the market, come to Dewsbury. And I think that's also on the assumption that, yes, we get a better image to the place. And my personal observation is that clearly with all imaging and perceptions, you need to have a change in reality as well, because there's nothing worse than saying everything's brilliant. People come, they see nothing's changed, and then they think, well, it's just confirmed my worst fears, and they won't come back. So we do need to make some physical changes first before we really start to up the ante.
Thank you, Peter. Yusra?
Yeah, just following on from Peter's point, actually, we just had our Batley consultation that has gone out to members of the public on our ward regarding the Batley Town Centre plans, which is fantastic. I think it's very important to highlight there can be antisocial behaviour issues anywhere, but this is about taking pride in where we live. And when things look tired and stressed, it's really important that we uplift them and put in the cash injection and put in new services and new places, new eateries in order to bring that market in and revive towns. And I think it's a fantastic project. I'm really happy to hear. And I think Chris mentioned a couple of things regarding, bringing young people in. I think it's the way to go. I don't want to be travelling as a person who lives in Batley to Leeds I want to have something here that I can go to, that I can be proud of and visiting every day. So I think it's absolutely great, whether it's in Batley or Dewsbury. And something else that picked up on Eric's point, and I don't think Harpreet you might picked up, and this, he mentioned that there was a new market is generating, and there's lots of interest from traders who do not at present trade in Dewsbury as well. And I just wanted to bring that point to your attention. So yeah, I'm quite happy whether it's in Batley or Dewsbury. It sounds like a fantastic way forward for businesses as well as people that live here. I would actually stress the point about marketing as well, which I'm sure it would come about in your big plans anyway at some point when all this is up and running, that you would market it as you go along in order to get that trade in and in order to get people in to come and visit. And I want to kind of see us to be the north of Kirklees, the place to be and the place to come work, live, that type of thing. So I'm really glad to see such a ambitious sort of plan put forward. So thank you, Simon and Peter.
Thanks, Councillor Hussain. Do you want to comment on that at all?
I don't think there's anything to comment. Thank you very much for that.
It's more of a, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the field house project. So it says in your papers on page 32, the project will set a new standard for quality of residential accommodation in Dewsbury Town Centre and will be aimed to attract occupiers with greater disposable incomes that will help support the town centre economy. So what is it about that project that's going to help attract people with greater disposable incomes? And I know one of the things we do, it's quite a small one, this is 23 apartments obviously, but a lot of things that we do talk about is making sure we've got that mixed income space as well. Obviously we do need to do more around making sure that we've got homes that people need in the area. I know you've got a much bigger housing project going on alongside it in Dewsbury as well, and I guess you'd say there you'd be looking at your sort of mix of housing as well, but just be interesting to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, I'm sure Peter will sort of chip in along the way. I think town centres in the Kirklees have a particularly difficult sort of first step into delivering housing and creating the right market to attract investors. There isn't a reason for a investor to come into either Dewsbury or Huddersfield at the moment because the margins are so small or non-existent. But we do believe that a living town concept for both towns is the correct part of the strategy. So we're trying very hard to work across the sectors, public and private sector, to make sure that we can kickstart that market. However, what we don't want is it to be lowest common denominator stuff. So we don't want, in this instance, 50 units crammed into that building when actually the quality will come at 23 units with bigger spaces, big one-bedroom flats, bigger two-bedroom flats as well, high quality fit outs, maybe slightly higher prices, aiming at a commuter market to Leeds, right by the station. We know it does work. Machel's Mill has worked in the past, so it could work. And we know there's some good examples in Batley, which is not very far away. And there's a particular market in Batley around the two mill developments there. So we know that part of North Kirklees can sustain sort of a high quality flatty development, either higher level rent or for sale. If we don't set the bar high, then everything that follows will be low quality too. So this is an exemplar project, but it does need public sector funding injection, that without a shadow of a doubt. And get this away, we've created a potential new market for Dewsbury. And that is the rationale behind it, because what we don't want is a proliferation of some of the stuff we've had in the past where, yes, landlords, developers have invested, but the quality is really not there. And there's a cycle of poor conversions, very small space, low rents. It's just a churn of tenants as well that doesn't create a community. We want people to be buying into the concept of Dewsbury, and you can only do that with a decent quality offer so that people purchase in the first instance and stay in that area and start to champion Dewsbury as a place to live. It's only 12 minutes to Leeds on the train, so it's a perfect place to live. Just got to change that image. I'll tell you a point about mix, but whilst we're getting started, we need to perhaps look at those policies around mix and look at whether or not they are not helping us to create the market in the first place. So it may be in the early stages we're not championing an affordable sort of housing offer, but we may do that at some point further down the line when the market can sustain that. But that is the theory at the moment. We're on the first small step on that journey. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Peter.
Just to say, perhaps two things. One, it's about the building and providing the right quality, and it has the benefit of being a heritage building with good quality fit out, large accommodation space. So that suits that particular criteria. The other is location, and one thing we've got to do is to make certain we roll out the whole investment programme and address these issues to do with community safety as well, because when this is done and this goes on the market, it's not just about selling this building, it's about selling Dewsbury as a whole. So when people come to have a look and they walk around Dewsbury, we want them to have a good experience where they do feel safe when they walk down Bond Street into the town, that they see a vibrant market, they see an arcade, they see there's opportunities to go out and eat in the evening. The town hall's open and there's shows going on there. Actually, this is a place where people feel that, okay, they might work in Leeds or somewhere else, but they can live in this infield house, or hopefully in the future somewhere else in Daisy Hill, and have all their sort of immediate needs catered for within Dewsbury. At the moment, we're not at that stage, but hopefully with this package of investment that we're putting together, along with addressing those issues to do with safety and pride in the area, that hopefully that's what we'll achieve.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I was going to support what Simon said, actually. That part of the problem that we've got with the drinking and the antisocial behaviour is very much that poor conversion, particularly in the Daisy Hill area, where you've got transitory tenants that never last very long, that aren't really feeling part of the wider community. So I think it is about creating some people that will be almost like it's almost like we talk about anchor tenants, don't we? It's almost having some people who'll have some reason to stay and will help build that community in the centre of the town that doesn't properly exist at the moment. So yeah, it is that, if you walk down Daisy Hill, some of the conversions that have been done there are awful, and therefore do go to that lowest common denominator, as Simon was saying. Just trying to tackle that, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think overall, quality is obviously very, very important, isn't it, really? I think just overall, I'm thinking, as you say, as you go further down with your projects and stuff, just that the priorities that we have as a council around affordable housing and mixed housing is going to be really important. And people in lower incomes also deserve good quality housing as well, don't they? So it's just thinking about that. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask? No. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. So I think some of the key points that were made were around antisocial behaviour, tackling antisocial behaviour and how that might impact on plans longer term. So making sure we prioritise antisocial behaviour and crime issues in the plan, making sure there's the right offer in the arcades and the market, and marketing and image is going to be important, as well as the physical changes that Peter had mentioned as well. So I think those were the key points that were raised. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Peter. Thanks. Cheers. So we're getting their members after a marathon session. There's still a few of us left, and the next bit was the work programme. So there's some additional items that have been added to the work programme that need to be confirmed, and this was part of the regeneration programme that is going on across Kirklees at the moment. So we said at our last informal meeting that we would meet with key directors and try and make sure that we get those planned in the timetable at a sensible time as well, to make sure we're seeing things before they go to cabinet and getting reasonable updates. There's also a number. Our agenda is very, very packed. So one of the things we were looking at was, can we put in an additional meeting as well? So that's something that we're looking at, because you know, one of the things we have to about this scrutiny panel, we've got 5 cabinet members that have got responsibilities in our panel, so it is ever increasing. But is there anything else that members want to say? They're happy to approve the items that we've got us to be confirmed, which are generally around the regeneration programmes and some SPDs we've got in there as well. Is that okay with members?
And then the other one was the update on homes and neighbourhoods.
Yeah.
In December. It seems a long time after the changes for us to be getting any sort of update around, you know, the bringing back in-house of K&H. So I don't know whether really, you know, well, actually it's a January meeting, that isn't it? I'm reading it's the agenda publication in December, so it's January. So it's almost a full year before we get anything through scrutiny about the reincorporation of homes and neighbourhoods into the council, and that feels late for me.
Yeah, so the only thing with that one, John, the Kirklees Housing and Neighbourhoods, is there's obviously been an ad hoc panel that was set up last year that basically covered K&H coming back into house. And there's an additional scrutiny panel that's going on at the moment. It's focusing on, ad hoc panel. It's focusing on the high rises, but will also include some of the work that's ongoing with Kirklees Housing and Neighbourhoods. That doesn't mean we can't see it potentially earlier, and we could look at moving it around, but it has been, a lot of it has been sort of has gone into this ad hoc panel rather than with us, really. So that's why there's been more of a gap.
So we have no sight of that. So, you know, neighbourhoods and housing is within the scope of this scrutiny panel. So to say, well, it isn't come to you because we're dealing with it somewhere else, doesn't feel like the right answer. The ad hoc panel last year was looking at the pros and cons of a change in structure for K&H, which resulted in it moving back in house. It was looking at that aspect. What I'm interested is understanding how it's working now it's come back in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it only came in. When did it come back in now, John? I've even kind of it was just that
beginning of the municipal year.
Beginning of the municipal year. So I mean, we could potentially look at bringing it earlier. I think we were just thinking, actually, it's been early on, and giving it a bit of time and having it come in January more than anything. I think that was, you know, more of a thought I had myself with Kathy, but potentially, I'm just looking at the programme, and we could potentially look at bringing it in a little bit earlier. But let me have a...
Yeah, my comment is, Chair, that I'd like to understand what their plans are, what their ambitions are, not necessarily how it's worked. You know, we brought it in with a purpose. What is that purpose? What does that look like? What KPIs are they working to? We've got no visibility of any of this at the moment, and I don't know who's looking at that. You know, we'll be nearly a year through before it gets scrutinised anyway, and that feels to me wrong.
Okay, I'm okay with January, but I can understand your concern. So what we could do is look at bringing it up a little bit more. So let me have a word with the Joda just to go through the timetable to see if we could bring it up a little bit further. In terms of the winter maintenance programme, it's as early as we can do it at the moment, unless we are potentially looking at, could we have a meeting in September, which might be an opportunity to cover it then as well. It's just trying to fit everything in, to be honest.
Yeah, my frustration is I raised this last year, and I mean 2020, not scrutiny year. So it seems unreasonable to be waiting this long to look at something, you know, so we end up where we're looking at it at a point in time when we have no influence over another year's worth of winter maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you brought it up earlier, but you know, as I've mentioned previously, it's really difficult trying to get things in. I'm never going to get agreement from everybody about when we timetable things in.
Either we're here to scrutinise or we're not. If we're here to scrutinise, we need to make sure that we have the opportunity to do so. That means meeting more often. We have to meet more often if there's more work to do.
And that's what we're looking at, John. We are looking at the timetable to say, could we potentially put some additional meetings in? I'm not going to get 100% agreement ever on this, and sometimes I have to make a decision as chair, and that's, you know, I'm not going to get 100% of people behind me, but I will certainly take on board your comments, and we'll look at what we can do on those two matters. Is there anything else from the other members? No? Okay. All right. I'm going to close the... Oh, sorry. Have we got any other business?
No,
Before I forget that.
That's the end of the agenda.
Sorry, what was that, Helen?
I said no, there's no other business. That's the end of the agenda.
That's the end of the agenda. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, members. And we'll see you soon. See you at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
See you on Wednesday.
Wednesday, yes. Yeah. See you tomorrow.
See you then. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.